What do you think of when I mention Syria? What images come to mind? Maybe you think of Masjid al-Umawi or Nawai al-Hama or الحرب or Suq al-Hamidiyya. As much as I'd love to entertain that idea, what you think of when I mention Syria probably looks a lot more like this. So then how come my perception of it is so different? I lived in Syria from the ages of 4 to 11. It's where I went to school, where I rode my first bike, met my best friend, and pretty much where I spent a very normal childhood up until 2011. The perception of Syria has been almost entirely dictated by the existence of videos and photographs to illustrate it. The media has dictated what the public knows of Syria by constantly showing us images that focus on the suffering, injury, and death of Syrian adults and children, as well as the destruction of Syrian cities. This single story of Syria has not only harmed the outsider's perception of the country, but also that of Syrians towards their own home. It has stunted any possibility for a healthy mourning process as we're constantly harassed by reminders of our trauma. I often think of my relationship with Syria as comparable to the loss of a loved one. When someone you care about dies, someone you spent every day with growing up, who taught you everything you know, you want your memories of them to be positive ones. You want them to be remembered for the value they brought to this world and for what they meant to you, not for their struggles, their shortcomings, and their suffering. Syria was my home, my family, my identity. It was fun fairs and nights by the pool. It was having my friends a car ride away and seeing my grandparents on the weekend. This is what I lost, and this is what I will remember. Visual representation and mourning are inextricably bound together, as it's through seeing what we had that we are able to recognize what we have lost. This is where the mourning process begins. Looking at these videos has a sort of double effect on our mind. On one hand, it allows us to indulge in the impossible idea that this family was not torn apart, that death and war and chaos were not inevitable, and that the smiles of these children would never be interrupted. At the same time, the videos also make what we already know of Syria even more poignant. We know that many of the children of Syria do not grow up to fulfill their dreams, but rather drown and wash up on shores in countries where they are not welcome. We know that the ancient ruins of Palmyra and Aleppo no longer stand as safe spaces for families to make new memories together. And we know that families are no longer able to sit on one table together managing to speak of anything other than war. My memories link the present chaotic representation of Syria to its past normality. They put some names to the faces of the 400,000 Syrians who lost their lives through this war and the 5.6 million refugees who lost their homes. There is no space for me in the mass media narrative of Syria to make sense of my past, no dignified representation of the trauma that I personally faced. In a time where the trauma of my country is commodified and only portrayed through shocking imagery, the hope of the crisis has been eviscerated. This makes it almost impossible for Syrians to process their trauma on an individual level. But I'm hoping that by showing you what I have lost, that I can help stir up a new dialogue around the Syrian war that not only allows for a healthier mourning process, but also asks you to rethink how you have engaged with this crisis. Thank you.